Hi, welcome to Fusion Beads. I'm going to be showing you how to make our Summer Vibe bracelet set. This cuff bracelet set features the 8x6 Swarovski crystal Rivoli fancy stones in mint green, peony pink, and azure blue. Since fancy stones don't have any holes, I went ahead and placed them in the 8x6 oval fancy stone settings. Then I used the 26 gauge silver artistic wire to wire wrap them onto the antique silver brass hammered cuff bracelets by Nunn Design. For my tools, I'll be using the tapered nylon jaw pliers, and you'll be using these to push down the prongs once you set the stones, some basic wire cutters, some chain nose pliers, and then I have a little bit of Hypo tube cement because it's always good when you're doing wire work like this, wire wrapping, to just put a little dab on your tails so that they don't poke you or get snagged on clothing. Okay, so let's get started. I went ahead and cut myself about approximately 3 feet of wire because I like to work in a continuous length of wire when I place the settings on here. You don't have to. If you're more comfortable working with smaller lengths of wire, you could wrap them all individually too. That is fine, whatever you're comfortable with. This is just how I'm going to do it today. So to get started on this, I leave my big long working tail below, and to do my first 5 wraps at the beginning, I use my tail here, and I want to make sure it's fairly in the center because I want my stones to be all centered on my cuff. But you don't have to. Again, you could have some off to the side, and not have them all be different, whatever your personal style is. So just kind of hold it on there gently against the cuff and go ahead and wrap your tail. You want to wrap it snugly, but not too tight because you want to be able to move it a little bit as you're working with the wire and make sure your settings are exactly where you want them. I'm going to start with 5 wraps to just get it nice and secure. Whoops, and that last one just kind of folded over. You want to make sure that your wraps lay right next to each other and they don't start to go over the top of each other. If they do, just take your wire off and adjust it. So I have that on there. I'm going to go ahead and cut my tail with my wire cutters, making sure not to cut my working wire. I'm not going to go ahead and glue it yet at this point because I'm going to work the rest of the way down, make sure it's nice and centered. Then I'll use my chain nose pliers to secure the wire, and then I'll go ahead and hit it with a Hypo cement. Okay, so now I'm ready to place my setting on there. So the settings have little holes on each side, 2 on each side that you want to go through. So I'm going to make sure I go into the right hand hole so that my orientation is correct on my bangle so it sits down. And then just go through the second little hole here. So as you can see, it's going through both and it sits on the inside the setting, so it's going to be nice and secure. So I go ahead and I'm going to thread that all the way down on my wire. Sorry, I have to kind of cover the setting with my finger there to kind of keep it on there. Try to keep your wire from getting tangled if you can. So then see, your setting sits nice and flush against the cuff. You can see that there. So then I go ahead, use my fingers, just kind of hold that little guy down, and then I'm going to use my working end and then just wrap that around the cuff. And then I come up, kind of put my wire to the side and I slide it under that setting and then just push it down with my finger because I like it to just be nice and secure on there. And I do quite a few little wraps here until I get to the other hole. I'm just going to keep wrapping here and then I'll show you guys what I got. So you do about 4 wraps that go underneath the setting. So that makes sure that it's really nice and secure, and then you come back up and you go back through the second hole on the other side. So I'll find the end of my wire here. Take that end, and if you can see that, go in that little hole again. Make sure you go through the second hole. So you should see that wire sitting on top of that setting in there. And then you just pull it through. And I just always use my finger to kind of hold my setting down to make sure it doesn't try to fall off or anything or slide off there. This does get a little easier as you go because you work with less wire and you kind of get one anchor down and stuff. So, all right, and then just pull it really tight. Okay, so now I've got it coming through both holes, and then I just continue to wrap. Again, you just want to make sure your wire is laying right next to each other, not overlapping, just so that it makes a nice flat edge on the back. So I'm just going to continue to wrap because there's a distance between the holes on this one and the next one I'm going to set. So I need to kind of fill in that distance with the wire, and then they'll be squished together. So you won't actually see the wire once it's all finished and stuff, but it makes for a really nice secure setting, and it just looks a little bit nicer from the side and the back. And again, if you start to wrap over your wire, just pull it off and adjust it. And I always like to kind of squish my wires together with my fingers to just make sure everything's nice and tight and secure. Do a couple more wraps, and then I'm going to pick up my second setting. All right, so now I'm ready to put on my second setting there. Okay, so now I'm ready to put on my second setting. Again, just make sure you go through the right orientation so that it sits next to your other setting here. I know it's really hard to kind of see that little detail here. You can see it went through that little first hole there, and you can tell when you look at the front that the wire is going over the setting. So you just take it and you slide it down. Again. Make sure it sits on the top. And see, as I said earlier, that's going to sit really close, and it's going to cover that wire. So it's going to be nice and flush and tight with each other there. So then you go again, just wrap under, come up. I always kind of put my wire to the side of the piece and then slide it under the setting. And you'll just continue to wrap until you get to that second hole. And I just always like keep pushing my wire down with my fingers as I'm going in there because I just like it to be nice and tight in there. So come up again, and I can always just tell to see if you're ready for the second holes, like where is it out on the base? And so you can see there's that little second hole, and there my wire's right next to it. So I'm going to go in second hole here, if I can find my tail. So I'm going to pop in that second hole and go into the front. Again, just always make sure that it's sitting over the setting because sometimes it has a tendency it can slide under there, and then just go ahead and pull that through. I apologize here, my wire is getting a little tangled for me. But as you can see, the artistic wire is very forgiving because it is pretty soft. So it's going to let me get through there. And then just pull it down. And it wanted to go over one of those wire wraps, so I'm just going to kind of pull it down there. All right, so I've got two settings on there. So in the same process that I just did these two, I'm going to do about 6 or 7 wraps in between, and then I'm going to pick up my third stone, do some more wraps, go into the second hole, and then do 5 wraps at the end. And then that's when I can push my setting around, make sure it's exactly where I want it. Okay, so as you can see, I've wire wrapped my 3 settings for my stones onto my cuff. I've already wrapped my tail, so I'm going to go ahead and cut that real close with my wire cutters. Then I take my chain nose and I just push it against the cuff to just make sure it's nice and tight against there. And I do the same thing on the other end that I did, because sometimes once you've been working with your wire, it pops up a little bit. And then I can see I left a little tiny nub, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut that off. Okay, got it off there, yeah. So it's got nice and wire wrapped secure on there. Then I'm going to go ahead and take a little dab of the Hypo cement, and I'm going to use that to just put a little dab just on those wire ends. Again, that's just to keep it from snagging and coming unhooked on clothing or anything like that. Don't need a lot, just a little bit, and then do it on both sides. And then once that dries, it will make sure your piece is nice and secure. Look, guys, like, all right. I did see that guy popped up again, so I'm just going to hit it again with my chain nose to make sure he's down there. There. So I'm just going to let that glue set up, and then I'll go ahead and put in the stones in the settings. Okay, so now I'm ready to go ahead and set in my stones. And so I'm going to start with the mint green. So there's a front, obviously a front and a back to these stones. The little faceted on the top comes up. You can see through it, and then the back has got the lacquer finish on there. So you want to make sure you have it facing up. And you just want to drop them in there and make sure it sits in their center. Because sometimes it can be like a little wonky, and then it's hard to push your prongs down because one side's like caved in a little bit more. So I have it in there. I can gently hold it with my finger so it doesn't pop out or move or anything. This is where I take my nylon jaw pliers, and then I'm just going to gently bend over those prongs. And I like to go corner to corner, then that way you don't, like if you do one side, then the other side pops up a little bit. So if you go corner to corner and vice versa, then that way you get it in there nice secure. So it doesn't take much, you know, be really careful because you don't want to break your crystal or your setting. Just take your pliers in there, hopefully you can see that, and just gently bend over. And it seems like ever so slight. You can see that it's just gently bent over there. And at first you're probably thinking, like, how's that going to hold it? But once you get all four done, it definitely holds it down. And then just do the same thing on the other side. So as you can see, I've got two corners done. And then I'm going to come over, back over here and do that. I still like to keep my finger on the stone just in case it wants to pop out on you. You don't want to lose it, especially after you've got the two settings in there. And then do the fourth one. And there you can see all the little prongs are pushed over the stone, and it looks really nice and finished. So I'm going to go ahead and set my other three stones, and we'll be right back. Okay, as you can see, I went ahead and set my other two stones on my cuff bracelet. So this one's all ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat this exact same process for my other two cuff bracelets using the Peony pink and the Azure blue stones. Okay, as you can see, I went ahead and completed my other two cuff bracelets with the stones. So now I have a nice little trio set here. You can find all of the products and tools for this inspiration design at fusionbeads.com.